Hey folks, Brendan here from Bluelight. Now, for those of you who haven't seen any of these videos before, just to let you know, I've been coaching and supporting people just like you to succeed in the police recruitment process for decades now. And on top of that, I've been supporting people for the police recruitment process, both as a retired officer and whilst I was in the police as a sergeant and inspector. So 26 years worth of coaching experience there. Oh my goodness. Thousands of you have succeeded as a result of my support. What an honor it is to be able to help you on your journey. So today I'm going to be talking to all of you, whether you're a potential recruit or you're in service already and you've got a specialist interview coming up or a promotion board or even, and I didn't have space for it up there, a transferee interview. And what I'm going to be talking to you about is the difference between forward-facing and scenario-based questions. Actually, and what I'm going to be talking about is how they aren't different at all. So where does this stem from? Well, one of my clients today, I've been doing some one-to-one coaching with, transferring one force to another, very special client of mine, someone who I supported at getting into the police several years ago. They're now ready to move to a different force. We're doing some one-to-one coaching. They've been told by one person to expect forward-facing questions. Someone else from a recruitment stroke HR told them to expect scenario-based questions. And he was a bit puzzled. What's the difference between the two? So I came up with some questions that are scenario-based and forward-facing, both at the same time. So the first one is about challenging inappropriate behaviour. I know this is the sort of question that could get asked as a rear-facing question. Can you tell me about a time when you've challenged inappropriate behaviour? And that's a good question. Solid question. You could get asked that as a potential recruit at a final interview. You're not going to get asked it at your online assessment centre. The question now would be more along the lines, might be a bit looser, sort of, can you tell me about a time when you've done the right thing, even when doing something else would have been the easier option? You know, so it's not quite the same as having to challenge someone's inappropriate behaviour. Anyway, I digress. When it comes to your interview, in-force interview, I'd expect questions around integrity, challenging inappropriate behaviour. Now, if we forward face it, it's going to be, so how in the future, as a member of this force or as in a specialist role or in the rank of, would you challenge a fellow sergeant or a fellow PC or your sergeants and any inappropriate behaviour that they demonstrate? So that's forward facing. A scenario based one is exactly the same thing. They give you a scenario and they might make it more specific. So how would you deal with the following situation? So they're not saying, how would you challenge inappropriate behaviour? They're saying, just how would you deal with this situation? And the two examples we came up with was a colleague, you saw a colleague sharing nude photographs of someone who looked like a police officer on your team, and you saw him sharing them on a WhatsApp group. Or you were a member of that WhatsApp group and you saw those pictures. Or another one we came up with was you're in the night kitchen and it's 3 o'clock in the morning and there's a few officers in there, including your sergeant. You go in there to make a cup of tea and you hear your sergeant in conversation saying something like, well, and they're discussing rainbow lanyards and rainbow laces to celebrate sort of pride. So something around LGBT here. And the sergeant says something like, well, that's typical. That they're always trying to be different, aren't they? They have to be different, don't they? Some comment like that. So how would you deal with that? Now, it's discriminatory, and some may say it's at a lower level. But if you're impacted like that, there's no lower level. So it needs dealing with. So they could give you a detailed scenario and ask you how you deal with it, or they could just say, how would you deal with in the future inappropriate behaviour? So it's something a lot looser. So they're both the same thing. They're both forward facing. They're both asking you, how would you deal with something in the future? It's just that the scenario based one is giving you a more detailed thing to work with. So one of the things we talked about was in the one that's quite vague, you could come up with a scenario. So you could actually create the scenario. Otherwise, it tends to come out like a bit of a shopping list. So other questions we came up with, and then what I'll do is I'll tell you about the structured approach we utilised. Let's see, so how in the future will you ensure your efforts are directed towards force priorities? How will you work effectively in the future with partner organisations? How will you engage with the communities that you serve and are a part of? So we played around with those sort of forward-facing questions. They're quite vague. They're quite vague, as opposed to giving you a scenario and then asking you how you would deal with it. They're both forward-facing. They're both scenario, it's just that one scenario is quite vague and the other one's quite specific. So one of the other things I advocate with that kind of question is that you have a structured approach. So the structure I advocate is you first talk about why it's important, and then talk about how you deal with it, and then you talk about what the result would be. So your why, your how, and your what. And some of you might be thinking that sounds a little bit like Sinex circles. Yes, it's been adapted, but it works really, really well. So many of you have succeeded at your promotion boards, especially using that structured approach. So there you go, folks. A little bit about how to handle scenario-based and forward-facing questions. And remember, if you're a potential recruit, there are forces asking these questions. How would you challenge any inappropriate comments made by one of your sergeants or by your tutor constable is a popular question. How will you in the future engage with communities in order to problem solve? That question is being asked by Cheshire at the moment of potential recruits. So don't think you can escape these sort of questions just because you're a potential recruit. Durham Constabulary at the moment give you scenarios around a vulnerability issue in the town centre. Norfolk Constabulary give you a death message. How would you deliver this death message to the parent of a young person who's been killed in a road traffic collision? Wow. These are quite challenging questions, but there's a structured approach you can utilise to answer all of them. If you want to find out more information about those, click the links below and find out more, and ask to join the Bluelight Police Recruitment and Career Support Facebook group. There's almost 20,000 people in it now, which is just incredible. And if you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe. Yep, and if you're watching this on Facebook, like and comment or something. Anyway, I'll catch up with you soon, folks. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope you got something out of it, and I'll catch up with you soon. Bye-bye for now.